Welcome back to Top Shelf EDU. Today, I'm joined by Jasmine So, a psychology student who just completed her second year at the University of Toronto. Welcome, Jasmine.
Hi, I'm Jasmine.
So, let's start with your program. You're studying psychology. Why did you choose this particular field and why U of T?
Well, right now I'm doing a double major of psychology and bioethics, and I chose to major in this field because I've always had an interest in psychology for like as long as I can remember. And after taking AP Psych at SMU, that sort of really secured my interest. And the courses offered at U of T with psychology and bioethics, they're probably the first courses that I sort of felt like passionate about rather than like obligated to take. And so I decided to stick with this path.
Okay, that's great. Now, in terms of your academic experience so far at U of T, what's it actually like? And is it as intense as people think or may have heard?
I'm gonna be completely honest. I think my first year was definitely harder than I thought it would be. I think that's because the system at U of T is definitely a hard one to get used to. I find it to be very independent. And so I find that knowing someone beforehand definitely really helps out because figuring out classes and programs and all of that stuff is definitely really complicated to do alone.
Yeah, that's one of the things that when I'm interviewing students or speaking with alumni, it's generally that just the independence, transitioning from high school into university. It's you're on your own, you're kind of finding your feet, but you have to be proactive in that sense for sure. Now,
Mhm.
everybody talks about the workload. What is it really like?
I will say it depends on the program, just because different programs definitely have different workloads and different types of assignments or exams. But we definitely do have our fair share of complaining that we all do. I think U of T really does like to keep their students busy and also engaged. So I will say the workload is probably heavier than I thought it would be. Definitely one to get used to.
Okay. Now, in terms of assessments, one of the things that when we're talking to students that they're often talking about how heavy the midterms or the final terms are at their school. What's it like at U of T? Is it project based? Is it more lectures? How does that look? And in terms of assessments, do you find them heavy weighted near the end?
I think it again depends on the program, but for me, I find the midterms and finals are definitely weighted a lot. The finals are probably weighted like one of my classes I think had a final worth 60%. So it's definitely it gets pretty heavy towards the end. It starts off light for sure, but you definitely have to keep yourself in check, stay studying, stay doing assignments and modules just to keep up with the final and the midterm and when exam season rolls around.
Yeah, no, that makes sense for sure. How much studying time would you put in, like as a psychology student, compared to your classes? So if you have a class and you maybe have it 3 times per week, how much are you studying compared to actual class time?
Oh my gosh, probably every day except maybe one day a week I take off or I don't know, I divert my work separately. I find that I am studying a lot. I go to the library every day after class. Usually when I'm there, I stay till the evenings. There's a lot of reading. I would say there's a lot of reading and writing, especially when going into second year for psych. It's a lot of research papers and writing research papers, conducting studies and that sort of stuff. It's a little more it's not that hands-on, but it's probably as hands-on as it gets with this program, which I do enjoy more so than just a bunch of multiple choice questions, which is usually what the finals are.
Okay, no, that's good to know for sure. Now, if it's not as hands-on, is it more lecture-based? Are you having group discussions? Is it just independent research?
It's all of the above. There's a lot of lectures, probably average would be like 2 times a week. I'd have lectures for one class 2 times a week, and they're pretty long. Some of them are like 3 hours. There are classes that they have smaller tutorials, and we do discussions every week, and also there are research papers that you conduct individually.
Yeah. Okay. Now, in terms of your professors or TAs, are they approachable? How do you usually connect with them?
Um, I would say that the bigger the class, the more intimidated I find myself with a professor or a TA. But honestly, they wanna help you. They're there to help, and so I find that if I have a question, I'll stay after class, I'll go to office hours. Office hours are incredibly helpful. Everyone always says that, but it's because it's true. Um, but in a class that big, like one of my first year psych class, it had 1,500 people in it. It was a lecture with 1,500 people. So obviously the professor can't answer everyone's questions. And so it really, really helps to go to office hours, to stay after class. And I think all the professors and TAs I've had in my time at U of T have been fairly approachable and they just want to help.
That's really good to hear. I've actually heard that, amongst all the schools, but you're kind of hitting on a trend here where students, because there's a lot more independence, students actually have to be more proactive and go out and do rather than wait for people to come to them. What's been the toughest part of your program so far in the 2 years that you've been studying at U of T?
I would say the exams and the papers, just because the papers tend to be really long and the exams also tend to be really long and very heavily weighted. But I think, yeah, yeah.
And I guess on the flip side, what's been something that's been really interesting or maybe the most rewarding class that you've taken so far?
I took a lot of pharmacology classes in my first year and also first semester of my second year, just because it's really interesting. And I was thinking about going down that path to do pharmacology, but the program itself is really, really demanding. And to take alongside what I'm already studying, which is psych, I didn't really want to compromise that. So I didn't, I decided not to stick with that program. But the pharmacology classes were definitely some of the most interesting ones I took at U of T.
Okay. Now we're going to shift a little bit. What's something about your university, about U of T, that really surprised you once you got there? Whether it was in the first few weeks or in the first month, but something that really surprised you?
Definitely how small the world is because I've met so many people in my 2 years here from all over the world, but somehow there's always like a connection between people or like social circles, regardless of where we've come from, which could be completely different ends of the world. And so I find that to be so cool is that I always meet different people that somehow are all like connected. And I think it's really sweet how small the world ends up being.
Absolutely. And that's really interesting as well. And it must help with meeting new people and kind of having
Mhm.
more confidence to go out and, socialize. Now,
100%.
yeah. And, looking back, is there anything that you wish you had known before starting at U of T?
I wish I had known how independent I have to be to set myself up for success because the change for me coming from SMU, which is such like an uplifting and helpful school system to U of T, which really requires you to be a little more self-sufficient, that definitely made me struggle a little bit at the very beginning of the year. But I think finding the right resources and asking for help at the very beginning, just when you have your first question, you just like jump the gun and get the help you need. I think that is what I wish I had done at the very beginning.
Okay, so for all you listeners out there, whether you're a first year student or just thinking about going in, think about the independence and maybe start that in the senior year of high school. So that way it's an easier transition as you go into your first year of university. Now, psychology is a different degree in terms of being able to work with people, whether it's co op internships, because it's a little bit different than maybe a business or something. Are there any opportunities for co op, for internship, or related work experience within the program itself? And if so, when does that actually start? Is it second year, third year, fourth year?
Well, in life science, which would be like the umbrella program, life science, they have a lot of resources where you can apply specifically to what you're studying to do co ops or like internships or research positions. And so you just sort of go all through one life science resource to apply for whatever fits the program that you're taking. But I actually didn't do a psychology related intern or anything. I did do a business one last summer just to keep my doors open and, see what it has to offer.
That's great. And how was that experience? And was it tough to land that position? Did U of T help you with that? Or was it, again, that more independent on your own going out to get it?
That was definitely more independent because also the U of T business program itself is so competitive. So applying through that probably I would have had slimmer chances. But I did a program at home in Hong Kong with the bank UBS, and it's called the Leads program. And it just teaches students like basic skills with like investment banking strategies and management, that sort of stuff. I did find it all to be very interesting and potentially helpful for the future.
That's great, and the skills you would have built there and developed, it would go so far in terms of either finding more opportunities indoor when you're ready to either apply to grad school, indoor start your career. So that's really interesting. That's great. Now we're going to switch a little bit again to the social scene at U of T. Would you say it's more laid back? Is it busy? What's the social scene like there?
I always tell people this, it really is what you make of it because I've heard completely mixed reviews from people that go to U of T. I've heard about U of T that, some people say it's like, "Oh, there's no social scene at all," or but I really think it is what you make of it because U of T is such a diverse place that you could be a complete homebody if you would like, or you could be super social and attend a bunch of like events and gatherings, whatever. I definitely consider myself to be a little more of an extrovert. And so my first year, I really tried to put myself out there as much as possible. And I tried to say yes to everything. If I was invited somewhere with like people that I wasn't really familiar with, I would just go just because, you know, you never know what could happen. And I find keeping an open mind and giving myself like a more busy social experience at the beginning of first year really made my university experience what it is now. But really, it is such a diverse place that you can be as social as you want or don't want to.
That's great advice. And as you mentioned, you just putting yourself out there, you never know who you're going to meet. You never know how that friend group may start to organize itself, the opportunities that you may have because of that. That's really good advice for anybody who's starting in their first year, putting yourself out there, making new friends and seeing what happens. Now, are you involved in U of T? I would suspect has lots of clubs and activities available. Are you in any clubs or organizations, or is there anything like unique ones that students may not think or hear about that may be interesting for them?
I am in a sorority, which is not the first thing that comes to mind, I think, when people think about U of T, because usually it's a lot of like clubs and sports as well. So there's like varsity and there's a bunch of clubs. I was a part of like a psychology society last year. There's a lot of little things like that. But I am a part of my sorority, and rushing in first year was definitely something that I would recommend because I got to meet so many great people and be a part of a smaller community, which really made my experience. Because U of T is such a big school, there's like 60,000 students or something. And so I find that rushing definitely made me have a closer knit circle and meet people that are a little more like minded to myself. And I was really happy about that.
That's so good to hear. In terms of it's not all work and no play. When you go to university, it's the experience is really important as well. So on the weekends when you might not have a class, what do students usually do for fun?
I think it depends on the season because we all know it gets really chilly in Toronto. But at the beginning of the year, it's a lot of hanging out outside, like frolicking in the sun. But I think when winter and exam season rolls around, it definitely becomes more of an indoor activity or even like just big library study sessions. And that's our socializing for the weekend. But something my friends and I do is we do game night a lot at because we all live in our own apartments now and we all live across the street from each other, which is so sweet. And we always meet up at either one of our places and we just play a bunch of like card games or something. I find that to be so much fun. And I really like that when we do that on the weekends.
Yeah, that would be fun. That's so good, especially when you have your group and you all live so close together.
Mhm.
Now, your first year, were you in residence your first year, or did you live off
Yes,
campus
I
as well?
was. I was
Okay.
in res the first year.
And how was that experience? Is it an automatic guarantee for residence, or is it something that you kind of hope you get into depending on when you apply?
Well, there's a lot of different residences at U of T, and so I don't think they would not have space. But I there was a situation with a friend of mine where she applied late and she got put at a residence for TMU. And so it wasn't the residence itself was lovely, but it was so much further from campus. So then instead of being like a 5 minute walk from class, she ended up being a 30-minute walk from all of her classes. And that gets pretty hard in the winter. So I would say stay on top of applying to res, stay on top of that sort of stuff, check your email.
Yeah, that's such great advice in terms of, checking your email. That's one of the things that we often hear students saying once they get to university. It's it's what they didn't really do in high school, but is really important in university. So anybody that's applying or has been accepted into university, whether it's U of T or anywhere else, please make sure you stay on top of the residence because that's going to be really important. Because not only do you want to get into some place that you want to live, but being close to campus is going to be really important, especially if you're in an area that gets a little chilly or snowy. So that's great. Now, if somebody's walking around the campus or somebody walks on the campus for the first time, what's the campus vibe like? Is it social? Is it academic? Is it a little bit of mixed?
It's definitely a mix of both because we do have a lot of libraries, but we also have a lot of open spaces where it's really nice in the spring or the summer. There's like a huge grass patch around where a lot of the lectures are, and people play like spike ball or volleyball on the grass. And I think that's always really sweet to walk by. And they have a bunch of benches, they have a bunch of outdoor space that is definitely utilized in the warmer weather, but it can have like we do have like pharmaceutical buildings or like the med sci area where it does get a little more intimidating and just like building looking.
Yeah. No, that's really good to hear. Now, again, we're going to just switch a little bit into well-being and support. If a student is struggling with their mental health, how is the support on campus? And do students feel like they can reach out when they need help?
There's definitely resources that are provided and encouraged. They always tell us to check out the resources. But since there are so many students at U of T, and I will say the wellness department, I think they only have one. So they're always pretty booked and busy. So if anyone has to make like any sort of appointment or they're, trying to look into that sort of support, I will say get a I would get ahead because it does tend to get really busy.
Now, let's choose it. We're going to go into choosing the right fit. You chose U of T. Why did
Yes.
that stand out for you? Because you had lots of different offers. So why did you choose U of T?
Well, first of all, my brother was here and I wanted to be closer to my brother. And I really liked the city because it's so urban as opposed to some of the other universities in Canada, which I definitely consider myself to be a city person. So I needed to be somewhere where there was like life and things to do outside of school. And it does feel like a little more grown up to be living in the city as opposed to like a university campus, which a lot of the other universities were. I really considered the UK, but culturally, there are a lot of differences. And I have just adapted so much to the North American side of life in the past couple years. So I did want to stick to it. And also, I got a merit scholarship for my first year. So I thought that was worth looking into.
Absolutely. And again, congratulations on that scholarship. Very well
Thank you.
deserved.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I guess in terms of being right, because you're on St. George campus, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So being right down in the city, there's so much to do. For those that, do like to have some fun or like to go out with friends, it's a great spot to be. Absolutely. What type of student would thrive? So if students are thinking about possibly attending U of T, what type of student would thrive there? And then on the flip side, is there anyone that who might struggle with the U of T environment?
I think if students consider themselves to be more independent and adaptable, they'd probably fit right into U of T because it is more grown up. If you're a city person, you'd like U of T. And I think that people that are unfamiliar or don't really like urban atmospheres may find Toronto or U of T a little bit intimidating. Also, because U of T is such a big school. Some people definitely find it intimidating, but you really have to like seek out the communities as opposed to other schools that are smaller and closer knit. I find it is what you make of it. So you have to be more proactive. So I find if a person is not as proactive or they get intimidated easily, they don't like being in super busy places, U of T might be a little scary at first.
Okay, that's really good for know. So anybody that's thinking about U of T, those are definitely some things to consider and great advice again. Now, for somebody that's still deciding, so if they're thinking about, do I go to U of T? Do I go to another school? What advice would you give them to help them make that choice?
Pros and cons list for sure. I made a pros and cons list of what I wanted out of my university experience, what I wanted like socially, and my academic priorities. I wrote everything out and my personal preferences, all of that. And I find that when you have everything laid out in front of you, you just observe it bigger picture, everything becomes a little more clear. What I did was I separated all the different universities I was considering, and then I did different pros and cons list underneath them, and I looked at them all at once and just saw everything comparing to each other, and that sort of cleared things up for me.
That's so great. Now, do you feel you made the right choice? Are you happy with U of T?
Yes, definitely.
Okay, great. So we're almost done here. Just a few rapid fire questions that I like to do at the end of each podcast. What is the best place to study on campus?
My personal favorite is the Gerstein Science and Information Center because they have a variety of study settings. They have like quiet areas, little cubicles. They have a more general area with really big windows, and I like the light coming in. And they have a downstairs where people like focus a little more. And they have a cafe, which I'm very fond of. So I personally get the most work done there, but there's loads of libraries at U of T. There's so many, and they're all beautiful. And they all have a different sort of ambiance. So all the libraries are great.
Okay. And then being in the city, there's lots of places to eat. But what would you say is the best place, whether it's on campus or just off campus, is the best place to grab a bite to eat?
It depends on what you want because there's not really one place that I go to, but more so areas with different food options. I would say Young Street, which is really close to where I live. It's on the way to campus for me. So there's a lot of food places, and my friends and I always stop by and pick something up for lunch or dinner on our way to or from class. And also the Annex, which is another area. It's close to the really big library, which is called Robarts. There's everyone's always at Robarts. There, I can't focus there. There's so many people there all the time. But a perk is that right around the corner in the neighborhood that they call the Annex, they also have a bunch of good food places.
Okay, very good to know. And then the last question, one survival tip that you would give somebody who's starting their first year at U of T.
I would say don't be scared to ask for help because I definitely was at first. And when I finally did, it wasn't as scary. Keep an open mind for sure because you never know what's coming and what good things could come your way. And read the syllabus.
So good. So if you're starting at U of T or any university, a piece of advice, read the syllabus, ask for help, and put yourself out there. That's so good. Jasmine, thank you so much for joining me today and for all your great insights, especially at U of T in the psychology program. We really enjoyed speaking with you, and thank you again. Thanks for tuning in to Top Shelf EDU, your inside look at the university experience. If you found this episode helpful, be sure to subscribe and share it with someone exploring their path to higher education. We'll be back with more insights, stories, and advice to help you navigate your journey. See you next time.